Greetings. I started making recording earlier this morning. Here it is, almost 7 o'clock. Started about an hour ago to simply say a few things about me for today. It seems that the nattering nabobs or legacy system journalists are falling all over themselves, with events in the Middle East and Eastern Europe and financial centers around the world. And in terms of controlling events, the Chinese economy is doing rather well compared to some others. And of course, the Russian economy is doing much better than some people might have thought. So it's really a day for a lot of folks to fall over themselves and each other, trying to make sense of it all. I haven't any ability, I'm on the receiving end, as usual, for a tremendous amount of stuff, and I just don't feel up to it, but today I think I'll be able to at least sample some of it, and frankly I don't think I can watch the Super Bowl. It is not easy for me to watch, with the ads and the hype. If I were really an excitable person, then maybe I would be excited by the media and the football and the ads and the whole thing. Instead, they try to get me involved in something by means that simply don't work. I have nothing against championship games and all of that, but I surely don't want to watch the halftime show or whatever it is. I don't know what it'll be. It'll make news on its own, I guess, whatever it is. So I will try to find something, that will help me understand why the West, the traditional West, culturally continues to fail in the face of adversity. I mean, it's, all kinds of challenges to the Western economy, each one, and overall, culturally, people are torn between trying to hold together what they've taken for granted to some extent, in the face of tremendous amount of immigration. That seems to, I guess if I had to estimate, I'm not sure, but some have suggested that the fact of the matter is that immigration is what's tearing people apart. People, I guess, were used to being a far less of a melting pot, or a tossed salad, as I like to say about the United States. The United States has never been so much a melting pot as a tossed salad. And I don't want to defend that, but I mean, I just think that. And other people, in the West have, for example, shared their own discrete languages. Of course, everybody has to know English, and some people think they know English when they don't, and that's been my great sorrow. That's a global problem too. Around the world, English is attempted by people around the world with mixed results. But it just seems like, when I think of the West, I guess I want to include, as far as Australia and maybe, here or there, as well as Europe. But basically, thinking of the United States and Europe, England, are they European? I've heard it argued both ways. It's a mess. Anyway, it just seems to me that's where all the immigration problem is. Although, Australia has, people banging on the door to try to get in, and they've tried to, handle that a little better than Europe as a whole, but then they have dropped the ball in their own right. It seems like people around the world really have failed to come up with what they really want to do, what they really want to say, what they really want to do. And then there are people who see all kinds of cunning things that can be done in the name of fair play. And I can't tell you what to think about. The two things I could point out in the news stories that are just fantastic. There's a skyscraper in San Francisco that's leaning to one side, and they're trying to figure out how to fix that. And then there's Harvard, which is a campus in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the New England section of the United States, and they've now lately they've been undertaking some of the heaviest lifting known to man. Well, maybe that's fair if you consider ignorance the way it is, or something. But lately, I don't know of any campus that has a more difficult task than what Harvard is trying to do. Now, that doesn't mean Harvard, is somehow strained beyond its capacity. It just means that it's an awesome task that they are undertaking, whether with others or whether to much satisfaction, I don't know. I kind of think that a lot of it will just, about like, an imaginary rocket. Forget what I said about trying to get a leaning skyscraper set up, straightened out in San Francisco. Think of a rocket twice as large as the largest rocket. I've forgotten who has the biggest one now. What, Elon Musk or the Soviet Union or China? I don't know who has the biggest, but anyway, think of doubling it and then saying, okay, somebody's lit a fuse, for stage one. And the enormity of what they're doing is all the engines are firing, and any minute now we'll see it move the first foot off the ground, and then stage 10 will finally light up, when they're leaving the solar system. And whether they have a living cargo, I don't know. But anyway, it's a tremendous thing to get started on the matters that are overdue for a lot of goodwill among those working on the trouble. Obviously, it's fatuous to have so much of that turn up as it has, and some other things too lately in the news. Just fatuous stuff that is in the news about the presidential campaign. But you know, when I first heard some time ago about this DEI, it's like changing the subject. It used to be, faulting the Israelis with their, people have every right, obviously. I don't think it's a worthwhile thing to say that boycotting is a tactic that made Martin Luther King successful. And then now people going around trying to get states and companies and treaty organizations to say that boycotting is illegal. I resent that. There may be some technocratic thing about making a distinction between legal boycotts and illegal boycotts. I'm not sure about any of that, but just, carte blanche, every idea that the Israelis come up with, no, I can't buy that. So, Martin Luther King would be rolling in his grave if he thought that, that boycotting would be, and labor union. It's terrible. Of course, they're trying to do their own heavy lifting. The Israelis have been trying to do heavy lifting all along, and martyrdom is a really big deal. Well, of course, I've been part of that unwillingly. I didn't volunteer to be defamed by any company, and thus by anybody else also. And so, there's nothing good coming of that, but that's okay. Apparently the people who do things like that literally do as they please. And yet they don't want others to do it as others please. But anyway, there was that, that I was aware of. And then came, a scandal in the Vatican about Opus Dei, being legitimated or rehabilitated. And I think that they've stopped halfway with that, and I don't know what to think. And I kind of, don't really care. I guess it could have ramifications for the wrong people if it's just a tempest in a teapot among people trading in imaginary ideas, imaginary problems. Fine, whatever. But if it has fallout, it could hurt people. I think that would be bad. But then another one came along, this DEI, and of course, as I told someone I know of as famous among many in Cambridge, I couldn't help but think, listening to some of the descriptions, that it might be some of the fallout of the Opus Dei thing in terms of, was it diversity, equality, and what? Inclusion? Well, these acronyms are beginning to cause a lot of trouble, aren't they? Years ago, there was a character, who filled in for, the sacred stuff that people like. Someone called Superman. Known as the mild-mannered Izzy Stone, or, the hypothetical hero cub reporter or senior investigator for the Fourth Estate. That Superman was a byline, Edward R. Murrow or what? I don't know. Walter Cronkite? No, I don't know. But anyway, the idea was that, Clark Kent was something vaguely like a reformed lawyer working as a reporter for big paper and thus able to work miracles because when he wasn't seen as Clark Kent, he was actually Superman. That is, the imaginary, the invisible hand of the marketplace of ideas in print. And but the only thing that could lay him low was what? Kryptonite. Kryptonite, of course, was the stand-in for, first of all, acronyms. Acronyms and kryptonite were synonymous. And then beyond that, any kind of coding that people did, whether it was publishing spy versus spy stuff in the classified section of a newspaper, or just embedded in phrases innocently stated over a radio station that would tell people when something could start or stop or had happened or prevented or whatever. The whole idea was the almighty First Amendment. And now the First Amendment, well, first of all, let me be clear. I think that a private enterprise has every right to pick and choose who can do what on its platform in the internet. If somebody has a private enterprise or whatever on the internet, then it belongs to him, And I think that if poorly run, it can do major damage. Just like you have every right, to run, a charter bus service on the highway. You choose whether or not people could get on the bus, but then, if you drive the bus off the highway and into a house, then that's a terrible use of your franchise, your free enterprise, the tour bus that you have. Same with an airliner. You can have 500 people riding along, depending on the people operating the plane, and they hope to get somewhere and all of that, and no one would challenge the ability of the airline to throw people off the plane, if they wanted to. It's their plane, and so on. That's the way it is with, popular media, in terms of, people who say, all right, it's my platform, and you're not going to be on it. Kicking and screaming, it causes a hell of a lot of trouble. But there's no alternative, no satisfactory alternative, but to allow somebody to do. But if for example, and this has happened, if a platform throws well-known people off of the platform, that's their right, and people found that out. But I have to say, it's outrageous that I should be called a subversive and censured, as a subversive. This is a matter of fact. And then, of course, if I'm cited as subversive, then I guess other people might tend to think of me as subversive, wouldn't they? It isn't so much that I'm, censored. It's that people know that I've been censored. Now that becomes a little more complicated, depending on what a franchise is saying, you know. Can the owner of a website, in effect, charge somebody with, something and allege someone to be involved in something that amounts to defamation? I mean, can anybody just say, well, the reason so and so is being censored is because of turpitude or just anything? Well, no, that's a problem. Well, no, I haven't been accused of that. I've been charged characterized as a subversive and dangerous. Does that mean the next thing will happen? The FBI is going to find out about that and say, oh, well, we can't let you fly in an airplane. Why? Because you are subversive and dangerous, and so on. So that the two aspects, on the one hand, a person certainly can be thrown off a website. A visitor to a website is a visitor, not an owner. But what if someone is thrown off a website and in the process is defamed or slandered or libeled? That would be a problem. I guess the next thing, though, would be, for people to have co-ops. For example, I know a journalist who spent his life's best work, some say, covering the Middle East, and he learned Arabic and the whole 9 yards, and then, not unlike others, he found himself thrown out of the New York Times family for, saying something that the Times didn't like. That's what the New York Times can do. And about the only thing you can do is report that fact. Say, well, my friend so-and-so is wearing a badge of honor. He was thrown off the staff of the New York Times for saying something that the New York Times didn't like. Well, I don't know much to do about any of this, except to say the U.S. right now is having a lot of trouble. And the West, meaning what? The major countries of Europe and maybe the U.S. and Australia. What else? Leaving somebody off? Well, the West is in deep trouble because of something kind of like, platforms. At the gates, the government said, you can't come in. You're an economic refugee, and we just can't let you in. Well, that's sort of like the Times saying, well, you might be a reporter, but we found out we don't agree with you. Well, anyway, these disputes, it's affecting me now. I was kneecapped during Vietnam, and people don't believe that, or if they do believe it, they don't care. And I'm sure it doesn't matter to almost everybody. It just doesn't matter what has happened and what continues to happen. But by golly, there's a fresh wound now in terms of one of the big sites, websites. But anyway, the crisis for the Western world, or Western culture, the classics and everything that has mattered, has depended on more than what we see. What, in Tokyo, they have hired people who are there to help cram people in so that the doors of the trains can close. Now that's a desperate situation. Packing people in to have people pushing, and then they can close the door. I guess that's exactly the opposite of, trying to keep people out of various countries. I don't have a remedy. I don't know. I do know that right away, I would say that these people that are against disinvestment or boycott or something like that, to claim that that is illegal is itself illegal and proves the point of the people involved that something is wrong. So like if a person, my situation, it becomes ridiculous and very painful. So I'm going to be reading about all that. I'm going to try to come up with something to say, and I think people just run out of things to say. If people can take a break and watch the Super Bowl, that's great. But I have to say I don't feel up to it. I guess the simple fact is I'm just too sad. I'm too sad. And then I look at those who really care about music, whether it be the popular stuff or stuff that goes back generations in the West. And I think that might be far removed from the agonies of, for example, not too many years ago, the United Farm Workers. I can remember when they were so poor and so downtrodden, and yet now, they own TV and radio outlets. They can sign contracts and do very well. But at the same time, while they're doing that, people pouring in over the border, and that's being allowed by people who like to break the United Farm Workers or dilute the pool of workers. And I think, then people talk about tariffs. People say, obviously we'd have a tariff and then we won't have, our economy thrown out of gear. But then they turn right around and not recognize that, having people pour in over the border, it's sort of like, the problems of whether or not to have a tariff. I think they have to be used carefully, I remember Wallace, the vice president, in fact, many thought he would be the next president after Roosevelt, but while that had been an assumption, really it was obvious to the people at the time that the fix was in and that Truman would be substituted. And there's a reason for that, of course, some might say, actually more than one. And so Henry Wallace was not able to even get started, as a chief executive. And I'm not surprised. Well, we're faced with that now, it's not just, the immigration problem. It's the same thing having to do with using cheap labor to put people out of work in, Ohio, Rust Belt, for example. And then the terrible things about the economy, the U.S. economy. There are enough people who learned in their classroom that FDR could not really get the economy going again unless there had been a movement to get the U.S. into World War II. And then the story is, in your textbook, boys and girls, is that World War II saved America from itself, that its industry sector was on the rocks, and only the war gave enough work to people at home and welcomed people back from the war for Eisenhower prosperity. Well, of course, we almost made the same mistake after World War II that happened after World War I. World War II happened because problems developed in World War I and after World War I that were so serious that it's like, two chapters of the same book. World War I and World War II, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, same god-awful mess. And now people are talking about, well, if we can gin up World War III, then that'll save the day. And failing that, we can have, shameful deals made that have U.S. contractors propping themselves up and propping up a narrow segment of the population, the industrial and military alliances leaning on each other and demanding others to foot the bill. Well, is that going to happen? Are people going to foot the bill for the arms makers and the people who work for the arms makers? Or, how many people driving a Ford pickup truck does it take to build a dozen rockets or arm a Sherman tank or something? Those, they take care of their own. They take care of their own. And other parts of the economy are paying the bill the hard way through unemployment and poverty and other problems. And then the big deal, is we don't have an education system in the U.S. worth 10 cents, I mean, that's proven. I've heard too many people say, well, we need World War III or something like it to kickstart the economy again. And so that's what they're trying to do with everything that I've noticed in the news. There's that drumbeat about spending money, borrowing money sometimes, to kickstart the economy in terms of warfare, just like World War II. Well, it's pretty hard to come up with World War III, but looks like people are about to do it. I started to say, I'm so bleary that I don't think I said it. I meant to say that I started an hour ago, or hour and a half ago now, to make a recording, and things stopped because I had over a terabyte of movies on the hard drive of my wonderful little Geekom computer. And fortunately, I had, an external drive like this one. This one's a cheap one. This is, $20 because it's the case and the drive is 256 gigabytes. That's a little thing, I can make sort of like a separate filing cabinet, in the room. Well, anyway, I just pushed a button and put, all of that, just one file, the video file from the Geekom onto the external drive that I have there already attached. It swallowed not quite, I'd say maybe 3/4 of of a terabyte now since I plugged it in. And so I looked up, and the prices have fallen. When I bought that terabyte drive, I've compared the specs. The new one that I'm going to buy soon is about, I'd say, 10% faster, and also has better sleep safety, maintaining itself asleep. In other words, I can leave it plugged in, ready to go. It does. They explain that they improve the stability of the hard drive when it's plugged in without being used. And what else? There's one. Anyway, let me finish something I'm saying. Anyway, so I did that, and now I've made a mental note to get another one. And I could have a stack of them, like, particular video. So sure enough, I started, in the same place, in the same file on the computer. It has SSD too. Starting a file again, and long before I need to, I'll have another terabyte on hand. But I'm also going to get, when I get another one, I'm going to get one of these cases. These plastic cases also have technical features, such as the management of the stability of whether it can sleep well, also the speed of transfer, and the capacity of the drive that it can manage. These manage 2 terabyte. I'm going to get another one for $12 for the next terabyte. They can manage up to 6 terabytes at maybe a third faster speed, which is, if you do the math, that's pretty doggone efficient. The only thing that makes me nervous is all of them say warranty is 3 years, and when you buy it, you have an option to, buy insurance for 2 or 3 years. I don't plan to do that. What I'll do is write the date on there and swap it out, if it comes to that. Of course, that's presuming that it's in constant use, which of course is not true. So mine are not likely to fail. But what I was going to say is, today I'll be looking for some ideas. What's to be said about, people who aid and abet violence, impoverishment, and the maintenance of poverty, and yet make it volatile? I mean, people go into a country and they sell everybody cell phones, with which the population is able to take a look and see how people live elsewhere. That creates demand for products and services that can't be met. How does that work? Well, that's like saying, you sell somebody a cell phone and he sees a Toyota ad, and then he demands to have a Toyota. Now, how are you going to organize an economy around that demand? So he finds out you're not going to open a Toyota dealership in Bangladesh, so he gets a plane ticket to go to Europe, where he can order himself a Toyota to drive around where they make VWs. Well, it just, these conflicts, are set up by the people who then say, well, what we need is violence. You know, hit people over the head who are getting out of line, and if they're in poverty, we'll just lock the gate and they can't, you know, show up for a free meal or a free Toyota or what? Or what? Is it that they don't know enough to deserve a Toyota? What is it they ought to be able to do or say to deserve an apartment and a Toyota and a cell phone? In other words, if we look at, native people, you know, whose family goes back, you know, generations, what do they do? What do they say and do to deserve a new Mercedes and a lunch pail and an apartment and a cell phone? Is it something they say or do that people from Pakistan can't say or do, or what? Well, there's some serious problems, and I might add there's some resentments that I know about personally that I can't resolve. I'm not the person who has Toyotas and Mercedes and cell phones and apartments to let in Edinburgh, a place that I looked at, by the way, while I was online yesterday, like anybody else. I simply looked at what is there, and, you know, apartments of $2,000 a month, you know, and of course that's if you're going to buy one, rent one on a streetcar basis, so that you don't have to buy a car. But you know, I can't walk up and down the stairs anyway. I'm not part of that demand. But other people with their cell phones, if they are in New Delhi, can look at how things are in Edinburgh and say, well, you know, I think I'll just show up and say, here I am, hire me, or something. I can't solve that problem. I'm going to be trying to find out why. Now, there's some who say, well, keep people ignorant. Well, now, just for the sake of argument, does that mean that we would start putting people in prison for selling smartphones in New Delhi? Because then they could look at Edinburgh or London or Paris. Well, of course, in New Delhi, they have businessmen who have recently built new factories to make the damn things. Smartphones from India. Why India? Well, because China had some labor unrest, and, you know, the pragmatic phone maker said, well, you know, we could spend our money here or there, you know. The Indians said, oh, build a factory here, we'll take care of you. I said, okay. The stroke of a pen. Put a factory in India, and that might teach what? The Chinese a lesson, right? Oh, not to get unruly, or the next factory might be in Vietnam or Cambodia. The world still really is run by the idea of you know, the basal cortex or whatever. You know, there are cells, there are regions of the brain where you have your little black box. You know, it's always measuring to see whether or not you have a comfort zone or not. Are you doing okay or not? And how we service that has been developed into a science. And basically involves more logistics than we need. But for the idea of driving a car, or if not that, then riding in a plane. There are people who understand that about the human metabolism, the creature that we are. We can tell when we're underway. More than that, we can tell, does the steering wheel work, the gas pedal work, the brake pedal? I'm in charge and I'm okay. Well, that's at issue, but I'm not looking to see much in the way of improvement. I guess I'll be spending most of the day seeing what the clueless people are doing, no matter how important they are. You know, I might even tune to a lecture by somebody, and somebody will stand up there and drone away about everything the speaker did since he was 10 years old. There's some people who go to hear that as much as anything else. In fact, some people don't even know what is being said except the introduction of a superstar. But it won't be about, who should look at Edinburgh or New Delhi or the factory that's 40 miles away. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and a cell phone can easily spread a little knowledge enough to be incendiary in some manner or form. And all right, well, the genie's out of the bottle. Now what are you going to do? Just had to make that buck? Yeah. On the other hand, the phone could figure into what? Classroom use? That'll be the day. Should you? Could you? Yeah, you could. That'll be the day. When are you going to do that? No, you'd rather sell, well, let's see, maybe a carbine or a grenade, a box of grenades or ammunition, instead of, some ways and means to use a phone to tap into something. Well, you can be sure they'll be looking at the car ads and the lifestyle in Europe, and you'll make what, $10 a month from $20 a month for every phone number you set up, and then say, well, we got to have a war. He was saying that. Yeah, I've looked around the last 10 days or so, and it's put like a question. Is World War III on the way? It doesn't say, should we have World War III? It doesn't say that. It says, is World War III on the way? Well, is that like saying, is help on the way? If you know for a fact that you make guns and butter, is World War III going to help you? Well, it's not going to help me, folks, and I think there are a lot of people that are now being characterized as dangerous because they don't particularly care for the pronouncements by spoiled brats. On top of, I guess it's just easier to hear the same thing from spoiled octogenarians spoiled baby boomers, they were spoiled. And now there are people, a third their age who have convinced me that, among other things, they're spoiled. You know what spoiled means? That's when you have something that's good that's gone bad. Well, I guess I fall in that same category, so I'm going to shut up. Just now turned 50 minutes. Plenty of room on the SSD for me to go ahead and upload it into the cloud. Like what? The hot air from anywhere.